Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from a caller named Anna. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Hi, Lloyd. My name is Anna. I'm a 22-year-old ex-JW from New York. I'd just like to start off by, first of all, saying thank you for everything you do, for the content that you produce, and the many, many people that you help, myself included. Specifically, your recent video on 1914 and 607 really it was great. It helped put the last remaining little bit of doubt to rest. So thank you for that. A little bit of background about me is I was raised in the organization from birth. Mom's a pioneer, dad's an elder. The whole works. So just today, I made the transition from physically in to physically out. And it was difficult, very, very long time coming. I've been an atheist since I was 15. But it was very difficult. I sat down and told my parents, hey, I don't believe in God. It's no secret that I've had doubts for a long time, but this is it. I can't keep pretending. And my dad sobbed in front of me for the first time in my life. My mom hysterically sobbed in the bathroom. And they confirmed, that they will be shunning me. My dad recommended that I formally disassociate myself. And that was very hard. I'm conflicted. And the two things I'm conflicted on are, first of all, whether or not to take his advice and formally disassociate. But more something else. They said something that threw me off. I told them, I said, okay, I will respect your decision to either cut me off, cut me out of your life completely, or limit our association. But I will not be an active participant of that. I will continue to talk to you. I will continue to have as much of a relationship with you as you will allow me. And I'm not gonna, cut you out of my life. So ball is in your court. And my parents responded by telling me, well, actually, the ball is in your court because you have the ability and responsibility to stop, whatever you're doing and come back so that we can associate with you. And I was so taken aback by that statement. On some level, I definitely should have expected it, but it took me aback. And I had no idea what to say in response to that. And then shortly after that, my dad got up abruptly and said, well, we're not going to miss the meeting for this. And the meeting's starting in a few minutes. So if you want to continue, you'll have to come back later after the meeting, which is pretty typical elder behavior, I think. A bit more callous than I expected, but I have no idea. I guess I'm interested in your take on what I might be able to say to them to show them, hey, you're asking something ridiculous of me, and this is entirely, your doing if you cut me off. This is not my fault. So yeah, I'm just curious what your take is on that. Again, thank you for everything you do. I hope you and your family are staying well. Thanks so much.
Wow, what a message. And I could really relate to that. You were basically describing essentially the conversation that I had with my father back in 2013 when I told him that I was disassociating because I could no longer believe. I was a bit older than you then, so I was, let me think, 33 around that time. And I had a wife and I had a child on the way, and yeah, slightly different situation, but ultimately the same conversation. So I can totally relate to the emotions that may be swirling around in your head at this time. I hope that since leaving this voicemail, things are a bit better for you. I think it's always more raw and more painful when you're having these conversations, when you're first kind of dropping that bombshell and giving this revelation to your parents that you're no longer a believer. Ultimately, I think time is a healer, and the more water flows under the bridge, the more people just sort of settle into this new reality and find ways of, I don't know, accepting it and not being in denial over the situation. So hopefully things have improved just with the passage of time since you left this message. But as to your question about what to say to your parents, it sounds like they were totally fobbing you off. You're right to say to them, it's your responsibility here. If you want to have a relationship, I'm here for you. You're right to say that. And dare I say it, it's even more your father's responsibility because you dropped into that message that he's an elder. And this is actually quite personal for me because my dad is also an elder. And my dad is in a situation where he is, quote unquote, a spiritual shepherd to those in his congregation. And if anyone in his congregation is having doubts, is struggling with questions about their beliefs, is struggling with their faith, he makes it his business as a spiritual shepherd to swoop in to the rescue and fix things. So isn't it interesting that you approach your father? I know it's your father and your mother, but specifically, let's isolate your father. Your father's an elder, and you approach your father and say, hey, Dad, I no longer believe. And as a spiritual shepherd, his response is to say, you need to fix this. This is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to just start believing again. I'm washing my hands of this. My work here is done. Isn't that interesting? In the case of my dad, I can remember the very first time I had a conversation with him. This is before I disassociated and before we had our major showdown. I just let Dad know, I don't think that the governing body, the faithful slave, are God's organization. And his response to me was, well, this is too emotional for me, Lloyd. You're going to have to go to someone else with that and get someone else to help you. Again, isn't it interesting that someone who purports to be a spiritual shepherd can't be bothered being a spiritual shepherd to his own son? And I'm seeing exactly the same arrogance, frankly, in your father. Dude, are you a spiritual shepherd or not? Yes or no? If you're a spiritual shepherd, how come you're only a spiritual shepherd to people who aren't your children? How come when your daughter approaches you and says, you know what, I no longer believe, you just wash your hands of them and say, you need to fix this. My work here is done as a spiritual shepherd, not buying it. And I don't know, maybe it might be worthwhile playing this video or sharing this video with your father so that he can hear this from me. You're a failure, sir, and you're a hypocrite if you're going around the congregation purporting to be a spiritual shepherd, and the first time there's an issue with the faith of your own child, you wash your hands of her. What's all that about? So for me, there's a lot of arrogance in this situation. But ultimately, I think you have already isolated the fact that it is preposterous to order somebody to believe. I'm ordering you as an atheist, as someone who's been an atheist since the age of 15. So you've been an atheist for over 7 years since you were a minor. I'm just going to order you to start believing in God. Not the way it works. Is that the approach that your parents take when they're going out preaching? Do they rock up on people's doorsteps and say, hello, we're Jehovah's Witnesses, and we're here to order you to believe as we do? I'm pretty sure that's not how they're doing their preaching work. So how is it okay to have that attitude with you? That's not how belief works. And frankly, it is the responsibility of your parents, if they care about you, and if they love you, and if they genuinely believe that you are in mortal danger as someone who has fallen away from, quote unquote, the truth, especially if one of your parents claims to be a spiritual shepherd, of course, the burden of proof is on them. Of course, they need to be able to explain why your position is unacceptable and why you're wrong, rather than simply just washing their hands of you because that's easier on them, because that's more convenient for them. Ultimately, I think this is an organization that makes it easy for parents to do this, makes it easy for parents to forget their humanity and forget the paternal bond that they have, or maternal bond in the case of your mother. Isn't it awful the way this organization subverts people's humanity in this way so that they can just wash their hands of someone and say, you know what? We may have raised you since birth. We may have cradled you as a baby and sworn to protect you and look after you and love you for your whole life. But now you won't indulge us in our beliefs. Now that you no longer view the world exactly as we do, we're going to shut you out of our lives. We're going to pretend that you're essentially dead. Isn't it evil the way cults do that? So hopefully some or all of what I've said resonates, and hopefully you can use some of what I've said at some point. Probably by now you're already experiencing full shunning if this plays out the way you've described. On the issue of disassociation, your dad doesn't get to, well, I guess anyone can recommend that you formally disassociate, but your dad doesn't get to insist on that. You don't have to play by their rules, so you get to decide when it's the right time to hand in a letter. If it's ever the right time to hand in a letter, you get to decide on what terms you extricate yourself from this toxic group. No one gets to insist that you have to formally disassociate or when you need to formally disassociate. But yeah, it's a messed up situation. Again, I can completely relate, but I'm afraid your parents are fobbing you off and making excuses. And ultimately, if they really do care about you, if they really do love you, and if they really take their responsibilities as your parents seriously, and if they believe that they have the truth, they should be sitting down with you and they should be explaining why you're wrong. But they're not going to do that because I think on some level they probably have doubts themselves and they're insecure as to whether they can reason with you and reason you out of your atheism. So that's all I have to say on this situation. Again, thank you so much for calling in with your voicemail. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to broadcast your message on my channel. But that's all I have time for. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lloyd Evans channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.